Y'all planning for this?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Perfect RIA Podcast. I am your host, Matthew Jarvis, and with me today, special guest, Evan Mayer. Now, Evan, obviously, is a special guy in a lot of ways, but he's one of, and I think, Evan, maybe there's 10 of us in the entire industry, which are successful financial advisors that are kind of pulling back the curtain, showing, hey, what it is that we really do on a day-to-day basis. You are doing it through your podcast for advisors, by advisors, so really excited to have you on the show today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Of course, of course. So let's give a little bit of background for our listeners. Of course, they should go onto Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to podcasts, find the For Advisor by Advisor podcast, download it, listen to it, give it 5 stars, all that good jazz. But give us a little background on you before you became a podcaster.
Yeah, so, I'm a financial advisor by trade. I don't even consider myself a podcaster, kind of doing it as a side project. I had gone on, are there 10? There's 10 of us out there?
I don't know that there's 10. Like there's you, there's me, there's Sten Morgan. There's not many.
So I was scouring the internet about a year ago, actually. I think, our podcast launched in August of last year, so it's been a year. My wife was actually having a pool party with some friends, some college friends were in town, and we were sitting there in the pool, and I'm sitting there with the husbands, and you're doing all that. What do you do? All that stuff. And he's like, well,
yeah, sure.
I met a guy, and he goes, I help people make podcasts. And I go, that's really interesting. It must cost a ton of money. He's like, no, you could probably get it done for like $1,200, something like that. And I said, it would be interesting. I love talking about our business. I love talking about it with other financial advisors. I love sharing ideas. But I scoured the Apple Music and the stores, and I never really saw anything specifically out there that was educating financial advisors. And they had Michael Kittis has a show, and some of these guys have shows, but I always looked at them as they must have a lot of money under management. They're outside of the scope of somebody that's just managing the size or maybe a little less than what I'm managing. They might not have the same struggles or the same day-to-day. I said, a podcast that is literally for advisors by advisors, and I kind of stole the name from FUBU a little bit, if you remember For Us By Us.
Yep.
And I thought that was kind of a cool name. I had a friend create a character that kind of looked like Joe Rogan, and I wanted it to be very, very Rogan-esque. I didn't want advisors coming in with a script. You were just recently on the show. I didn't have a script for you. We just kind of talked. And that was kind of the concept of it, just something that, would be fun for advisors to hear. Maybe they could pull an idea or two away from it, but really just talking shop.
Yeah, and I love that your show is not scripted and that it's very real. I think you and I have been in the industry about the same period of time, and we both remember the early days of going to the broker-dealer conferences, and they would parade around the top producers, right? Hey, Dave did $1 million and Sam did 10 million and whatever. And you would try to get some information from them, and it was kind of just a good old boys I go out and I see the people and I tell them to sign up. Well, what did you do on Thursday though, right? Or we have the converse, we go to these industry events, and I think we're all very postured. Hey, let's just say the right things. Let's talk about our designations. Nobody says hey, listen, I haven't seen a prospect in 3 weeks. I don't know how to get the next prospect in the door. No one really says that. So I love that you and just a couple others hey, here's what it takes to be an advisor. And it's hard, right? It's a hard thing to do.
It is. And I think everybody has, it's not always the person that's doing the most business is the person to learn from too.
Yes.
And what I noticed on my podcast is we've had people on that manage $20 or $30 million. We've had people that are on that manage 100 or 150 million. We've had people that manage $4 billion. And wow. I think what the nice thing about that is that you get to hear from each one of them what makes them unique and what makes them successful. And it doesn't, AUM is not a level of measurement for success. Yes, if you have a lot of AUM, in turn, you probably are making a decent living. But it doesn't necessarily mean you're a good financial advisor. And so I think you can learn a lot from all kinds of financial advisors that are out there.
Yeah, for sure. And I'd be curious your thoughts, Evan. I feel like the AUM number gets really focused on because that's how the whole industry, the whole network around us all gets paid, right? The mutual fund companies, the TAMs. So everybody really highlights that. It's a big number. But you're right. If you've got $1 gazillion in assets and you don't have any time to spend with your family, you started this podcast because you were spending time with your family. If you have no time with your family, I don't think you won the game. So tell us a little bit about your practice, Evan, where you're at, kind of how did you end up with the free time to start a podcast for advisors? This isn't driving business to your practice, right?
It really isn't meant to. I guess at the end of the day, we're always looking to grow, and I'm not at a point of capacity where I really want to grow my book anymore. It's really more of Can I help other financial advisors grow their book? Can I, that to me is a little bit more interesting at this stage. I have a great set of clients. I love what I do. It's my primary source of where I spend my time. It was never a focus. So I started in the business in 2005. Was a transactional broker. I was a broker by all accounts. I was the guy you hate now, or that you should hate now. I wasn't in it for the love of the game. I was in it for the money. I hadn't made any money yet, right? So I went out there. I did that. I turned to a fee-based broker, and I still say, there doesn't matter how you get compensated. You can be a broker and be fee only, and you're still a broker. If all you're doing is money management. And that's basically what you constitute as a financial advisor or financial planner. You're a broker as far as I'm concerned. So I kind of did that for a while. And then I realized I really got to get my CFP. I got to understand the ins and outs of this business. How do I truly help add value to clients? And when I started down that road, my business just multiplied extremely quickly. We went from, having a few $1 million under management to hundreds of $1 million under management. And AUM is the way I get paid. So for me, it is some sort of level of compensation for me as the AUM grows, because I can't say I'm fee only because I still get some trails and things like that, but I'm pretty much what you call fee based. And at the end of the day, I really thought a podcast was interesting. I find it funny when advisors say, I don't have time. You have time. It's just a question of where you want to spend your time. Some advisors go, I don't have time, but they work 25 hours a week and they're out doing other things that they want to do. And that's cool. I'm not going to hate. But how long does it actually take to do a podcast? Like me and you are sitting down here. This is going to take us whatever long it takes us.
Yep.
And I'm having fun doing it. So I'm going to do things that I enjoy doing. And this is something I enjoy.
I'm glad you called that out. I was at a conference a few years ago, and I was sitting at a table, which the reason I go to conferences is so I can sit at a table with other advisors and hear what it is they're doing. I don't really care about any of their presentations. And so as it went around the room, each advisor was saying I have 12 clients, but I'm at capacity. And the next one says, I might have 20 clients, but I'm at capacity. They kept going around. I was so puzzled, kind of your point. I said, what do you mean you're at capacity? And they said, well, I just don't have time to see more than 12 clients. I said, well, please tell me your business model. If these are 12 family offices for which you're doing insane planning, otherwise it sounds like you're spending a lot of time screwing around, which unfortunately happened to be the case. But I loved, Evan, that you called out right away. Never tell yourself this victim language of I don't have time. Elon Musk is putting rockets on Mars. And what do you and I do? We're trying to record a podcast. We have time to record a podcast.
And he's doing his bicep curls to take on Mark Zuckerberg. So, there's always time. My book of business, we have 160 relationships. We see about 85% of our clients we see quarterly, either through Zoom or in-person meetings. Those normally last anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour. So that's 3 a day. And the rest of the time, I'm busy managing the assets and then thinking of ways and ideas to grow and get better at what I do. And there's always time in the day.
Yeah, though I get that it doesn't ever feel that way, right? Once you've got the mindset right of I've got all the time in the world, but there's a lot of busy work, right? You could spend all day listening to podcasts or all day checking your email or all day managing your client accounts, right? There's a lot of things that will suck your time away. But to your point, all right, let's carve out 30 minutes to do a podcast every week. That's how Micah and I got the Perfect RA started. We said, listen, every Monday morning we're gonna get together for an hour. Now we always kidded ourselves and said we'd do 2 episodes in that hour. We spend a half an hour BSing about life, then we hit record and we get an episode done. It just happens, right? You force it to happen.
Yeah. Well, from now on, I hope you guys hit record right away. That BSing is probably where you can get some good stuff.
It probably is the most valuable part. We always joke that that's our therapy time with each other. So that's where we're talking about life. And we've always thought about hitting record from minute 1, but we kind of need that time. You wouldn't believe what my team did today, or you wouldn't believe what I'm doing, with my kids or whatever else. So maybe someday we'll hit record there.
Yeah.
So you mentioned when you're meeting clients, you're doing 3 meetings a day. Would you mind giving us some insights into those meeting days? Just again, for advisors that are wherever they're on their journey, it's nice to know how you run the day to day.
I can give you kind of a typical day. The typical day is normally I get in the office sometime between 8 and 9. Normally there's a call or something from a client or something from the prior day that we got to get done. Hopefully there's no trade fixes or anything along those lines, but it's normally getting some things, making sure we're taking care of some things, putting out any fires there are. Our first client normally starts the day at 10. I normally set up 9:30 for any kind of business work to do for the practice, get that done. The 10 o'clock meeting is we bring in the client. From that point, we'll normally go over their financial plan. We'll look at any new action items. Day prior, normally between 4 and 5 o'clock, we get our reviews prepared for the next day. So what are we talking to the client about? What are some potential issues that are coming up in their plan or in their portfolio that we need to discuss? We look at their risk tolerance. When was the last time we updated their risk? We use a software called Riskalyze to do that, I think it's called Nitrogen to do that. We look at their current portfolio. Does it need to be, altered? What changes need to be made? What is their tax situation? We kind of get all that stuff on a piece of paper, kind of ready to go with the client. We do the normal review of kind of going over the accounts and how everything's doing. Then we jump into the financial plan. We get everything updated, make any adjustments to the plan, make sure that we answer any questions for them. And the average meeting, dependent upon what the client wants to dive into, it can be as short as a half an hour. It can go up to an hour and a half if it's a very in-depth meeting. And then after that, we normally have one of our crew with us in that meeting. They'll normally take the notes for the meeting, put the meeting notes in there, update the financial plan, do the money adjustment moves we need to do. And then we do manage the assets in-house. So we're not using, outside money managers, which a lot of financial advisors do, and that obviously frees up their time. I enjoy that part of the money management, and I also like that the buck stops with us and we can make those decisions. We do a lot of individual stocks, individual structured notes, individual bonds. So we don't do a lot of package product.
Sure.
So there is work that's involved in allocating. And so, probably an hour and a half to 2 hours goes into allocation throughout the course of the day as well. And so during that day, it's a 10 o'clock, a 1 o'clock, and a 3 o'clock. Sans, if we don't have a 3 o'clock or we set up a podcast, we'll do the podcast at 2:30, 3 o'clock.
I want to highlight for our listeners, make sure they're doing the math here, right? So we talked at the beginning of this episode that you made time to launch a podcast, right? But you're meeting with clients on a regular basis. You have a full client book, and you're doing individual management and of individual securities, bonds, and structured notes. Like, these are things, any one of those could be a full-time job in its own. So you've got to have a lot of rigidity in there and structure to make sure you're getting all of that done and still having time to spare.
Very structured. We have 2 support staff that handle my book of business with me, that actually help with the notes and getting the plans and everything updated, get the money carved out, those kind of things. I do the investment buck stop, I guess, is with me. They might allocate as I tell them to allocate.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you're right. A lot of it that can be full-time, but like I said, it's where you want to spend your time. I'm not, I have a friend of mine who, loves doing mixed martial arts. So he's out of the office probably at 1 or 2 o'clock every day going to do that. Another friend that likes bike riding. I get home 4 to 5, so not crazy late. I get home. First thing is we have a basketball hoop outside with the kids. We go shoot hoops, and we have a gym in the house. We all go lift, and we all eat dinner together. So I think, to me, I don't, sans golf, because I love golf. I play Saturday and Sunday, and I play Friday morning. Monday through Thursday is work. You definitely put the time in.
Yeah. I love this family ritual. So you mentioned when you get home every day, pretty consistently, you guys do basketball and you lift and you have dinner together.
Yeah. I got 2 girls and a boy. I got a 7th grader, a 5th grader, and a kindergartner. And we got a basketball hoop out front. We'll play, horse and around the world. And then sometimes it'll be the 3 of them versus me. And I'll get my good workout in that way, and then at some point, like 8 o'clock, 8:30 after they go down, then it's time for me and the wife to get an hour or 2 in.
Yeah.
And then we just start it over again. And it sounds ritualistic and maybe boring for some people, but I've always believed in consistency, and I enjoy consistency. And so I love my life. I wouldn't change anything.
Yeah, no. I'm super fascinated by that, because I think that's something a lot of us struggle with, is actually turning off work, especially if you're working from home. But even if you're working at the office, a lot of times, let's say we leave the office at 4:30 or 5, whatever time you leave the office, but really you're still in office mode until 6, 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night. So maybe you're physically present, but you're not really shifting gears. So I love how you just have this routine because you could think of business all night, right, Evan? I mean, you've got a big practice going on. You could think about business 24/7, right? I mean, you're really making intentional to push that out of the way.
If I could share one thing, which I didn't share, which is a ritual, and it's a must, and I've written articles about it, and I did do a podcast on it. I practice something called transcendental meditation, and I do 20 minutes before I go to the office, so before I actually leave the house. And then before I leave my office, I have like one of those, I don't know if you ever heard of a moon pod, but it's kind of like a beanbag chair. It's a
Okay.
fancy name for a beanbag chair, right?
Okay.
And I put those noise canceling shotgun headphones, I put those on my ears. And before I go home, I do 20 minutes of meditation.
Interesting.
The way I think if for people that have never practiced transcendental meditation, it's just getting your files in order. So if you have a paper, I always give the analogy, if you have a table full of paper everywhere and you had 20 minutes just to get all that filed properly and looking nice and getting everything organized in your head, that's kind of what transcendental meditation does to your mind. Kind of gets everything squared away. And so when you get home, I think the biggest thing is being present, not being on your cell phone. And when we go play basketball, our kids are not allowed to have their phones out there. I'm not allowed to have my phone out there. This is our time. And so I think TM is something that I picked up. I wrote an article in Worth Magazine about it as well. If you haven't tried it, highly suggested. It's not cult-like. I heard that once. They give you kind of a mantra, and the mantra is just a word you think in your head that basically gets you away from thinking about anything else. Like if I said ice cream to you, you could have thoughts of having ice cream with your kids, so the mantra just has this no meaning to it, and you just kind of say it in your head. You're not actually even saying it out loud, and it just clears your mind from work, and so you literally go home more peaceful. And I started doing that in 2013, and I credit that for a lot of my success. It's been huge.
Yeah, boy, that's really, I appreciate you sharing that, Evan. I feel like those are the kind of things that no one really mentions. Like, hey, listen, if I leave work in the afternoon, my head's just a mess and I go home and my family life's a mess because I can't stay focused. And you're just being honest, like, hey, I got to sit in this beanbag chair with my headphones on and meditate for 20 minutes and kind of clear my brain, which has got to be a night. And like you said, well, since 2013, it's transformed your practice. It's got to be phenomenal for your life.
It is, and luckily now I own my own practice. Back then I didn't, and I used to have a door that had a window on it, and I'd be like, people are going to see me in here. Like I would like turn my back to it. It was really uncomfortable, but having my own office now where I can actually shut the door and nobody can potentially look at me is even easier, I guess, to meditate. So.
Yeah, well, and it speaks back to your making time, right? So you could dismiss that and say, hey, I don't have time. I mean, 40 minutes, damn near an hour by the time you block it out and sit down and do all your things. And an hour out of an 8-hour day, that's a big chunk of the day. Obviously, the results speak for themselves on the ROI on that investment.
I think so. And, there's a lot of things people spend their time doing, a waste of time to somebody else. But, if it works for you, let it work for you. I know some people that need to run and they need to do that and that, I try to find time to do that as well, right? I think there's need for both, but I do think meditation is kind of a separate thing. And as being a financial advisor, if you are somebody that's handling money, and what I mean by handling money is you're actually doing the investment management piece too, and you're seeing clients, your brain's going to be pretty, tired by the end of the day. And how do you reorganize?
Yeah, and you have team members, and you have, if you own your own practice, you have a lease and a copy machine and computers, and like you said, you've got kids, you've got a wife, you've got family. That's a lot to juggle. I'm curious, Evan, other rituals. You said you're very kind of a ritualistic guy. Are there other rituals that are going on in your practice or in your life on a regular basis you wouldn't mind sharing?
I mean, everything is ritualistic, I guess. I mean, I like my patterns. Like if I have a 10 o'clock appointment, it's at 9:30. I make it. It screws up the ritual practice of almost everything. But I guess, Monday through Thursday to me is work time. Yeah. And when I'm in the office, I am working my butt off. Come Friday is kind of, I guess I had to hit a certain number in my head where, a certain revenue number or certain asset size number or certain goal number where Fridays I would start to slowly, I don't want to say take off because I don't take the full day off, but I play golf early Friday morning. I play golf at 7:30 in the morning. I'm back in my office by 10:30, 11. So that's a ritual Friday morning thing. Getting close to single digit. I'm at 10.0. So I need one more good round to get there.
Nice.
And so I do that. I come into the office, and then at 4 o'clock, and this happens almost every Friday, I go in for a massage. It drives my wife nuts because my wife works and she's like, why don't I want a massage? And I'm like, well, I make the time to do it. You got to make the time to do it.
That's right. How are you working? Yeah.
Yeah. So I go in for that massage. It's this great place. Phenomenal. They do Thai massage on the back, which is just like, I need, especially after playing golf, is good for your back. I do that. And then Saturday and Sunday, no work. I shut off. Monday through Thursday, work my butt off.
Yep.
And again, like it depends on where you're at in your practice. If you have 10 or 20 million under management, and again, I know we're using that AUM, but that's kind of, that always helped me
kind of benchmark at least, yeah.
Step to something. and your goal is to get to 100, 200, 300, whatever your goal is, like, then maybe you need to work Fridays and Saturdays. And my first 10 years, I was working Friday and Saturday night. I was working, 6 in the morning to 6 at night. I have videos of myself, like, being up at 6, being like, let's do this. Like, that kind of motivation. And I think I still love what we do. I now have a practice that's sustainable, and I have a comfortability. And now I want to grow in other metrics. We brought on 3 new advisors 2 weeks ago.
Wow, that's
we're constantly looking to grow. And so it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, boy, Evan, there's so many pieces there. I just love that you've got those structures in place. And I think, as you highlighted earlier, it's not that the exact rituals you have are the perfect rituals, but you've just been intentional about them. Like maybe getting massages every Friday isn't right for everybody, but it's right for you, and you've identified that, and you've made that work. But I also want to highlight, and you kind of hinted at this, Monday through Thursday, like, you're busting your butt. This isn't like, hey, let me sit around and check email and let me read Twitter and let me post on LinkedIn. I mean, you're hustling those days. I guess to your point, you're really earning that massage, you're earning that Friday off, you're earning that weekend off. So I don't want listeners that are earlier in their career to think, oh, you know what I need to do is I just need to get massages on Fridays and I'll be successful like Evan. No, you need to bust your butt like Evan, and then you can earn massages on Fridays.
Yeah. And I don't do my LinkedIn posts. I have somebody that does them now. But look, there was a time where everything was me and literally had no sales assistant support, nothing. And you're on your own. And look, I tell the story. I started in this business in 2005. In 2012, when I restarted my career, when I went to SunTrust, that's now Truist, I moved over $10 million. I started with just $10 million 11 years ago. I didn't start the massages and the golf stuff until about 2.5, 3 years ago. I would say for the first 10 years, my work practice, it was work. It's funny because I interview people now from time to time, and they'll ask, like, can we work from home? What's the work-life home balance situation? And that's the new generation, and I still haven't wrapped my head fully around it yet. And I'm like, well, 30 years old, get to work. What are you doing?
Get to work.
So there was no home life balance back then.
No, there wasn't.
I think as time goes on, you will burn out if you don't. If you're a student of the game, there's some people, again, that say they're student of the game and work 20 hours a week. That's different.
Yeah, boy, there's a whole spectrum there. Well, Evan, man, I really appreciate you sharing some of your rituals, especially, it really spoke out to me, the one where you get home, you have this very specific ritual with your family. That's something I'm definitely going to work on adapting better with my own kids. So again, thank you so much for your time. As a reminder to all our listeners, check out Evan's podcast, For Advisors by Advisors. Again, one of just a handful of really successful advisors who are sharing what actually works in their practice. Be sure to download it, like it, give it 5 stars, all that good stuff. Because again, Evan's investing a lot of time in this. If it's valuable for you, help him see that message. Evan, again, thank you so much for being on the show. And for all our listeners, until next time, happy planning.
Hold on before we go. Something that you need to know. This isn't tax, legal, or investment advice. That isn't our intent. Information designed to change lives. Financial planning can make you thrive. Start today, don't think twice. Be a better husband, father, mother, and wife. The perfect RIA, the perfect